So the next habitat hero that we're going to talk about is the garden snail that sometimes get overlooked, but they're a very important part of our biodiversity. So the word Oscuelga for the snail is Shelada. So the garden snail then is the Shelada gary. So the what they look like. Now I'm sure you've all seen lots of different snails before, but they all have very special parts of their body. So their tentacles at the top, they have four tentacles in total, but the two at the top here, these ones are to help them sense light. So they don't have eyeballs, unfortunately, so they can't really see anything, but they can sense light around them so they can tell where they are if they're coming close to something in a shadow, so they can navigate that way. They have two tentacles at their mouth as well, and this helps them to smell and to sense if they're coming to their food, where their food is. So they're very good. They really rely on their senses other than their sense of sight. We have their shell as well, so I'm sure you can all recognize a snail by its shell. Most of their shells are brown or they have specks of yellow and white in them, but they're never one color. There's lots of different colors within the shell. You'll notice that the shells have these spirals inside of them. Each of those spirals is called a whorl. So that's a pretty cool name for the spirals on the shell. Some snails can have as many as five of those whorls on their shell. And lastly, there is another part of their body and it's called the foot. But snails, as we know, don't they can't walk around. But this is basically the way that they get around is through their body, which that bit at the bottom is called the foot. So you might wonder how are they getting around if they don't have any legs to bring them around. So here we have here how the snail moves. So inside the foot of the snail, you'll see these little white kind of shapes moving up and down their body. And they're like little muscles, and those muscles help them drag along the ground so they can get from A to B. So it's a little bit harder for them to move, but they can definitely do it, and they just do it at a slower pace than most other animals do. Brilliant. So, where do they live? So, you'll most commonly see these in your garden. You'll see them in their school gardens, and you'll see them in their parks, in the woodlands, and the hedgerows. So, basically, they grow anywhere that they can eat. So, that's the real question, what do they eat? So they eat lots of different plants, including fruit from trees and the crops of our vegetables. So has anyone here ever done gardening in the summertime? And you'll see whenever all your crops have grown, and you'll find lots of big holes in your lettuce leaves or in your cabbage leaves, different things like that. That's because the snails have come along and they've been eating all the lovely leafy greens that you have in your garden. Did you know that snails, instead, they don't have mouths like we do, so it's harder for them to eat their food, but instead, on their tongue, they've loads of different teeth. They have hundreds of teeth and helps them break down their food while they're eating it. So they're very clever. They can do all sorts. They can move around and they can eat, even though they look so different to other different insects we see. So, how do they live their lives throughout the year? So, in the wintertime, they'll go into a deep sleep that we were talking about before. So they'll get really, really cozy and warm and they'll find a really safe space and they'll tuck into their shell. And they'll stay in there all winter long because there's not much for them to eat and it's too cold for them. So they take a big rest and they'll wake up again in springtime. So that whole process is called hibernation. So a little bit similar to what the hedgehog gets up to as well. So after their long sleep from the winter, they're very hungry. So they'll get out and they'll start to eat again. And they'll eat all the leaves that are starting to grow on the trees. In summertime, they'll lay their eggs. Um, so they can lay up to 100 eggs, I believe. So that's a lot of snail brothers and sisters these snails could have. On the soil, you might be able to see these in the summertime. If you're playing outside in the back garden, you might be able to see little tiny white like dots on the soil. That's all those eggs. They're all snail eggs you might see there. Then in the autumn time, all those baby eggs, basically, they turn into little baby snails and they'll eat lots again before they go into hibernation. And they do this process again and again and again each year. So, like I was saying, they can lay up to 100 eggs, and both the boy snails and the girl snails can actually lay eggs, which is pretty cool, very unique. After just 2 to 4 weeks, the eggs will hatch and they'll have baby snails, and they can grow up to two, they can live for about, well, they'll keep growing for the 2 years. So become a full adult by the end of the 2 years. The snail slime that you'll probably see, you'll see these trails over footpaths, and sometimes you can see them glistening in the light. They look lovely. But these snail trails, basically, it's how the snails keep themselves nice and safe whenever they're moving across the ground. Because as we know, the ground is very rough and it'd be kind of hard on their bodies. So they put out this nice thick slime and it helps them get over all the different shapes on the ground. And if there's anything spiky, it protects their bodies that way. So it's very important that they have all that slime around them.